I couldn't shake the feeling that the store was closing in on me. The back room, what I had seen in there, it haunted me. I wasn't sure if it was real or some twisted figment of my imagination, but deep down, I knew it didn't matter. Something was wrong here, and I was slowly being drawn into its grip. John had left me in charge that night. It was a rare occurrence, but I had to admit I was nervous about being alone in the store. The air had been thick with an unsettling presence all week, but now it felt suffocating. The normal hum of the refrigerators and the flickering of the lights had become a constant source of anxiety, a background noise that made my skin crawl. It was just after midnight when the stores started to change. That's when it started, subtle at first, but then more obvious as the night wore on. The lights flickered again, dimming for a second before returning to their usual dull glow. The shelves creaked, and I could swear I heard footsteps from the far end of the store, slow, deliberate. But when I looked, the aisles were empty. I tried to tell myself it was just my nerves. I hadn't slept much the night before, and maybe I was seeing things. But then the whispers started again, faint at first, like murmurs that drifted through the air. I paused, listening, trying to figure out where they were coming from. It wasn't the customers, that was for sure. They hadn't come in yet, and the aisles were still barren. But whispers grew louder, and then something else happened. The temperature in the store dropped. The air felt thick with frost, like I was standing in the middle of a snowstorm. My breath fogged up in front of me as I hurried to grab a jacket from the back room. But the cold wasn't the worst part. No, that came next. The customers arrived. It was like they appeared from nowhere. One minute the store was empty, and the next they were there, standing in every aisle, moving in perfect unison. There were more of them tonight, more than I had ever seen before. They didn't make a sound. They just shuffled past, their blank, lifeless eyes staring at the shelves. Not a single one of them even looked in my direction. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I watched them, my heart pounding in my chest. There was something about their movements, something wrong. They didn't walk like normal people. They glided, their feet barely making a sound on the floor. It was like they were in a trance, unaware of their surroundings, unaware of me. I tried to ignore them, tried to focus on the shelves and my tasks, but it was impossible. The air had grown heavier, and the store felt like it was alive, breathing. The more I tried to push the feeling away, the worse it got. And then the unthinkable happened. One of the customers, a woman this time, stopped right in front of me. She was tall, her hair long and unkempt, her clothes torn as though they had been worn for years. I couldn't see her eyes, just two hollow, empty sockets where they should have been. She stared straight at me, her head tilting slightly to the side, almost like she was studying me. I felt my throat go dry, my mouth going numb. I tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but nothing came out. She reached out, her cold, lifeless hand hovering just inches from my face. My pulse quickened, and I stepped back, but my feet wouldn't move fast enough. Her hand brushed my cheek, and I felt the cold shoot through me, as if her touch had sucked the warmth from my very soul. I gasped, stumbling backward, and that's when I heard it, the sound of the door at the far end of the store creaking open. I turned, my heart racing, but there was no one there. The lights flickered again, plunging the store into near darkness for a split second, and when they came back on, the customers had vanished. I was alone. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen, my mind trying to process what had just happened. The whispers had stopped, the cold had lifted, but the feeling of being watched remained. It was as if the entire store was waiting for me to do something, waiting for me to break. The clock on the wall showed that it was past 2 a.m. now, but it felt like time had lost all meaning in this place. The store wasn't just a building anymore. It was something else, something alive, something that didn't want me to leave. I couldn't stay here any longer. I had to get out. But when I tried to leave, the front doors wouldn't open. I pushed against them with all my strength, but they wouldn't budge. I turned around, panic rising in my chest, and saw the manager's office door was closed, the lights still off. The store wasn't letting me leave. It was holding me here. My breaths came in quick, shallow gasps as I backed away from the door. I could hear my heartbeat thudding in my ears. There was no way out, no way to escape. I stumbled through the aisles, desperately looking for another exit, but the store seemed to stretch on forever. The aisles that had once been familiar now twisted into endless rows of empty shelves. I felt trapped, suffocated by the walls closing in on me. And then I saw them. The customers. They were back. But this time, they weren't just standing still. They were moving toward me, their slow, deliberate steps echoing through the store. There were more of them now, hundreds of them, all coming closer and closer. The whispers started again, louder this time, their voices blending together into a chorus of unintelligible words. It was like they were speaking to each other, sharing some secret I couldn't understand. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I was frozen in place, watching the customers closing in on me, their lifeless eyes locked on mine. Then everything went black.
When I woke up, I wasn't sure how much time had passed. The store was quiet. Too quiet. I was lying on the cold tile floor near the front counter, my body stiff and sore. My hands were trembling as I pushed myself up, my mind struggling to make sense of what had happened. The lights were flickering again, casting an eerie glow on the aisles. I rubbed my eyes, trying to shake the lingering dizziness, but when I looked around, the store felt different. The aisles seemed longer, the shelves taller. I couldn't remember how I had gotten here or what had happened in the moments before I passed out. The memories were fuzzy, distorted, like they had been blurred by some unseen hand. I stood up slowly, my legs wobbly beneath me, and tried to shake off the creeping sense of dread that had settled over me. I didn't know how long I had been unconscious, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't alone. The store wasn't empty anymore. The customers were back. But something was wrong. They were closer now, moving in tighter clusters, their empty eyes still locked on the shelves, but this time, they weren't just walking. They were standing in odd, unnatural positions, their bodies twisted in ways that didn't seem possible. One of them had its arms stretched at an impossible angle, reaching up toward the ceiling, while another stood with its head tilted back at an unnatural angle, its eyes fixed on something that wasn't there. The whispers had started again, low at first, then louder and louder, until they felt like they were pressing in on me from all sides. The voices were incomprehensible, a mix of murmurs and gasps that I couldn't understand. But they were there. I could feel the weight of them in the air, heavy and suffocating. I staggered backward, my heart pounding in my chest. I was losing my grip on reality. The store was playing tricks on me, I knew it. But the more I tried to convince myself of that, the more everything around me felt wrong. I turned and started walking toward the exit, but as I did, I realized something horrifying. The doors were still locked. No matter how hard I pulled it, no matter how much force I put into it, they wouldn't open. It was like they had been sealed shut by some unseen force. The whispers grew louder as the customers began to shift toward me, moving in unison, their stiff limbs jerking in ways that weren't natural. I couldn't breathe. The air was thick with an oppressive energy that pressed against my chest. The walls felt like they were closing in on me. The shelves seemed to stretch and twist in ways that defied logic. Everything was wrong, and yet I couldn't escape it. The whispers turned into voices, clearer now, and somehow familiar.
I could hear names being called out, distant voices from my past, each one ringing in my ears, getting closer and closer. My breath quickened as I stumbled through the aisles, desperate to get away, but no matter where I turned, the voices followed. I was losing my mind. I could feel it slipping piece by piece. The walls of the store felt like they were pressing in, suffocating me, and the more I fought it, the more the store seemed to push back. It wasn't just the customers. It was the store itself. I thought about John, the way he had acted so distant, so detached from everything around him, the way he had warned me about the store's rules. Don't work past midnight, don't go near the back room. But I had already broken those rules, hadn't I? And now I was paying the price. The store was punishing me. The thought was enough to make me freeze in place. My body locked up with terror. I was trapped in a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. Then it happened. A shadow moved in the corner of my vision. I whipped my head toward it, my heart leaping into my throat, and there it was, a figure standing in the farthest aisle, just out of reach, but it was moving. Not like the customers, not stiff and mechanical. This figure moved fluidly like a person. But there was something wrong about it. Something twisted. It was John. But it couldn't be. Could it? His face was pale, almost ghostly white, and his eyes were wide, unblinking. He stood completely still, but his mouth, it was stretched wide in a grotesque grin that didn't belong to a human face. The grin didn't reach his eyes. His eyes were empty, hollow like two black pits. I wanted to scream, but the sound stuck in my throat. The store was suffocating me, trapping me in its grip. The shadows grew longer as the figure moved closer, and I realized with a sickening feeling that John wasn't human anymore. He was part of the store. He was one of them. The customers began to close in again, moving faster now, their footsteps growing louder as they shuffled toward me. My heart was pounding in my chest as I tried to back away, but I was paralyzed. I couldn't move. My feet wouldn't respond. I was rooted to the spot, unable to escape the growing terror that surrounded me. The air grew thick with the sound of the whispers, the voices now indistinguishable from one another, all calling my name, pulling me deeper into the nightmare. The shelves seemed to stretch and bend around me, the aisles closing in like the jaws of a trap. John's grin grew wider as he stepped forward, and I saw it then. A flicker, a dark glimmer in the shadows behind him. Something was moving. Something large. Something alive. It wasn't just the customers who were watching me anymore. The store itself was. And I realized in that moment that I wasn't just trapped in the store. I was becoming part of it.